Genska terapija je eno najobetavnejših področij v medicini, predvsem pri zdravljenju redkih bolezni, za katere še ni učinkovitih zdravil. V prihodnjem desetletju bo pomembno preoblikovalo dele evropskega znanstvenega sistema na področju zdravljenja redkih genetskih bolezni in nekaterih vrst raka. Kako povezovati bolnike, industrijo in znanost, kdo naj nosi stroške in naložbe? Gledate oddajo Zoomin. Medicina se z gensko terapijo premika od vseživljenjskega obvladovanja simptomov k odpravljanju temeljnih vzrokov bolezni, kjer lahko tudi en sam poseg nadomesti zdravljenje in stroške, ki nastajajo ob tem. A prav vprašanje stroškov in kdo naj jih nosi ostaja ključno. Genska terapija pogosto predstavlja dražjo enkratno obliko, a v preračunih, koliko lahko zmanjša strošek vseživljenjskih zdravljenj simptomov, je v določenih primerih tudi cenejša različica. Zdravilo Zolgesma, na primer, ki zdravi spinalno mišično atrofijo, stane 1,8 milijona evrov na odmerek. Alternativa so vseživljenjske injekcije, ki v 10 letih nanesejo skoraj 4 milijone evrov. Evropski projekt GeneH, ki poteka od januarja 2025 do decembra 2028, financira program Horizon Europe s skupnim proračunom 4,9 milijona evrov. Konzorcij slovenskih in portugalskih raziskovalcev, podjetij in organizacij, ki povezujejo bolnike, razvija genske terapije za 3 izjemno redke bolezni. Gre za model, kako se tak razvoj financira, kako se laboratoriji povezujejo z industrijskimi partnerji in kako se znanje iz laboratorija prevede v zdravilo, ki je bolniku dejansko dostopno. O potencijalih in pomenu genske terapije govorimo z dr. Mojco Benčina, vodjo Centra za tehnologije genske in celične terapije, ter profesor dr. Luís Pereira de Almeida z Univerze v Coimbri. Hello and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, it's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting us.
Professor Pereira de Almeida, if I start with you and maybe with the project, GeneH is connecting science, industry and policymakers, and of course patients, in what you call a quadruple helix model. Why is this model necessary, and why isn't it enough to have just a good researchers with adequate funding?
Well, Europe has been very good at producing high-level science, and particularly in generating science that addresses different genetic disorders, very severe disorders. And we, in general, in Europe, have excellent results that could bring alleviation of many different diseases. Unfortunately, the translation process in Europe has been very weak. So most of the preclinical studies that we do at the universities do not translate in clinical benefit for patients. So we thought that we needed to do something about that. Both Dr. Mojca Benčina and myself here at the University of Coimbra in Portugal, we started the projects to develop gene therapy centers of excellence with teaming projects funded by the Horizon Europe. And then we thought that we needed to go one step beyond this. We needed to take advantage of this quadruple helix and put together not only the academic capacities, but also to bring the industry, to bring the public authorities and the patients in order to integrate the whole ecosystem and make it easier and faster the process of translation. And so this is what we are aiming at. Transforming the excellent research that is being done in Portugal and Slovenia at the biomedical level into clinical benefit for patients.
You are also working on 3 very rare diseases. What are you learning developing a therapy for these diseases that affect 100 people that is then applicable, of course, to diseases affecting millions? This is, I think, one of the important moments of the whole process that you are developing.
Well, the thing is, we know very well these diseases. We know the genetic cause of these diseases. We have developed strategies already that look promising. And the way we think about this is that, of course, we intend to bring therapies for these 3 disorders, spinocerebellar ataxia type 3, on which we have been working for many years here at the University of Coimbra, CTNNB1 syndrome and Cluster syndrome. for which the partners led by Dr. Mojca Benčina have been working also. And so as we will take advantage of the extensive knowledge that we have already on these diseases to progress into a clinical application for these disorders. But the objective is not limited to these disorders. What we intend to do is to create platforms where we know exactly how to proceed to bring new therapies for many other different disorders, some that are very similar, some that are different. And so this is the main concept is to create platforms that allow us to extend the learning process in this translation into many other disorders.
Professor Benčina, your center was established precisely for this kind of development. How does the center work in practice, and what is your maybe concrete role in the project? What does it mean for Slovenian expertise in this field, of course?
Yeah, in a way, the center just started. We are fresh on the field, but the main goal of the center is really translation. So what we actually get, the knowledge, new knowledge in science, the center will need to do it in a way that we can actually use this knowledge for the patient, for the benefit of the patients. So this connection with the Portuguese partners is extremely important because we are facing the same path and we are actually asking each other what we can get a better help, better development, maybe even help each other in a way to get better solution to the specific problems. And why is this important for Slovenia and actually also for the Portuguese patient is that eventually we will have a center in Slovenia which will be translating the science to the final products. At the moment, it looks like when we want, let's say, to send the patients to advanced therapy, we have to send the patients to the abroad, let's say to Germany, and that costs additional money. So we are really striving for that we can actually produce the medicine, advanced therapies in Slovenia. And this project, which we are talking about, GeneH, it's some specific project which will collaborate, bring together patient association, industry, science, and medical partners so that we can work together and build on the knowledge of the existing platforms to get to the final goal, get the medicine to the patient as fast as possible. So that's the main, let's say, goal of the project and also of the center.
If we stay with funding for a little while, because I guess this is one of the core problems and also one of the core things that we have to address. GeneH has 4.9 million euros of European funding for 3 diseases and 4 years. What happens after that?
If I maybe start before Luís, because he has probably the different vision, I think the main goal is with this GeneH platform to attract also the partners from the industry. So when the project ends, we will start with, we already have to start during the project collecting and let's say finding the sponsors to really promote the development of the therapies, in a financial way. So during the project, we will enable us or taught us of the technologies we need to know, and we also will get a very good idea how much that will cost. And also during the project, we already have to start collecting or at least advertising our knowledge to the sponsors so that the sponsors will be the ones who will be bringing the money to the project and to development of new diseases. Of course, during that time, we can also apply for fundings which are EU funding related to that kind of, let's say, translation parts. But most importantly, what we see when the project ends, that we will have enough knowledge to really be promoting this kind of translation also for the industry, so that we will attract the industry into this consortia.
But Professor Pereira de Almeida, you are already working with the industry, from what I understand. How do you already see maybe this relationship developing during your project?
Well, we have been working with industry for many years as a service provider and as well as a co-developer of different projects. Here, of course, we have this initial starting funding of 4.8 million euros that will help develop these projects, but it is not sufficient actually to what we propose to do. So the real costs will start now with the toxicity studies, with this development and production under GMP conditions of the viral batches. All that, the preparation for the clinical trial application will be very expensive, and we are already seeking for more funding from private sources precisely to make these projects progress to the clinical translation. But of course, I totally agree with Dr. Mojca Benčina that this is just the beginning. This is kind of the GeneH is kind of a runway for what comes next. Basically, we will establish hopefully connections with industry that will be long-lasting and that will help us to thrive in the development of therapies for many other diseases. So we expected to establish a sustainable system where we collaborate permanently with the industry, where they provide know-how on the manufacturing and also capital, and will help us to develop our own projects. And so like this, we expect that there will be a fruitful collaboration between the academia and the industry that will integrate both systems and will allow this overcoming of the attrition process in the translation.
Do you both maybe already see signals or enough momentum from the industry to really kind of start collaborating, to start funding and everything? I know there's a lot of momentum in Slovenian society due to the stories that we already had in Slovenia, but what about the industry? Because, of course, the money needs to start flowing in, and especially if we want these medicines to really come to patients.
So I must say that we have already 3 partners from the industry. From Slovenia, Jafral and Biosystemica, and from Portugal, Blue Pharma, and they are collaborating with us. And I think this collaboration will be very important to know each other and to understand that by working together we can do better and faster things. But of course, we are also talking with private investors in order to attract more funding and other collaborations besides the ones that we already have secured.
Professor Benčina, yes.
Yeah, maybe I add a bit on that. I mean, we are open for newcomers also from the industry, so the project is open for that, and we are constantly looking also for other sponsors or industry money providers. So in this maybe in this site, what we see, it's actually the industry is interested, but there is always a question. I mean, because we know that that's really expensive. How then the IP and all the knowledge will be distributed, and who will be actually the owner? So we are solving also this kind of regulatory issues as well during this project. So it's actually a project which is teaching us how to actually approach to that kind of very demanding structures we see with development of the advanced therapies, which are extremely expensive.
And we also, when we look at also the development taking place within the project, when does it actually connect with the system of insurance? We have ZZZS in Slovenia. When and how do insurance institutions come into the picture?
Well, in Slovenia, we are constantly talking with the regulators, because first of all, we have to actually get all in line with the regulators, because even though we are developing advanced therapy medicine, it still has to be safe for the patients and has to actually show some kind of effect for the disease. And at the same time, we are talking also with the financial part of Slovenia, when and in what stage they will be willing to contribute to let's say, a system of development. At the moment, the regulatory part is stationed like this, that it's not really in favor for the advanced therapy medicine products which are not yet let's say, approved by the regulatory agency, let's say Europe, EMA regulatory agency. So this is some steps we still need to do, hopefully within this project, to make some new steps in a way how to change this kind of regulatory mechanism.
If I understand, also to make it faster, for the patients to be able to access them. Do you also think that when we are talking about rights and everything, should the results of this center, of your center, which basically is funded by the public money, should the results remain accessible to patients within the Slovenian healthcare system, or will this maybe be a thing of negotiations and etc.?
We have to be aware of this, that we are actually making the medicine for a rare genetic disease. Rare genetic disease, it's actually already, with the name say, that we have in Slovenia a very small amount of patients. And with this, we are actually looking for that this stays in the domain of the patient, so that the IP and development stays in the hands of the academics and the patients as well.
And what is the industry's reaction to that?
Yeah.
And the industry is also prone to these kinds of distributions. Yes, Professor Pereira de Almeida.
Well, one of the things that happens sometimes in these disorders is that the industry is not so interested, okay? Because when the number of patients is very small, it becomes very difficult for the industry to recover the investments. But this places one of the questions that is very much discussed in the area, that is the question of the access of patients to these therapies. And of course, the numbers have been quite high, so the costs of these therapies are extremely high. But we believe that by aligning all the stakeholders of the ecosystem, we ended working still under the public system, we will be able to generate therapies that will be much cheaper. And so this will help the access of these therapies to patients. So this is our idea. Of course, you know, the universities and the research centers do not have they are not fit for commercialization, so I think that is the job of the companies to do that commercialization. And I think they can enter later on, once we've overcome this process of all the toxicity studies and the clinical trials of stage 1, they can come later and move the commercialization process on. And what we're doing is facilitating all this process, making it possible to happen in our countries, having the technology in Slovenia and in Portugal, and not being dependent on technology generated in other countries, and being able to generate therapies that we will bring to our populations and the overall population of the European Union at a much lower price and a much faster pace. Because this is also one of the issues. We have 7,000 rare disorders without therapies. And so we need really to accelerate the pace at which we develop these therapies.
And Dr. Benčina, Urbanogen was an example in Slovenia that can present kind of as a good practice in Europe as well. But what was the key to that? Is this a model that is replicable for other rare diseases, or was this maybe just a number of coincidences that just kind of puzzled together in the right way?
Well, we can't say that it was actually the coincidences. It's actually the success of a single mother who was having the child with the rare genetic disease, and we see this kind of Urbanogen story as a very good model for. Let's say, progressing in the development of new therapies. So because when there are patient associations involved in the action of developing a new advanced therapy, the goals are very specific and very well defined. And with this, we have a very strong pool, what is the end aim of all the development. So at the end, the patient associations are asking for us to develop a therapy which will be safe and efficient. And with the Urbanogen, we've seen how that really helps when the patient association is really with the heart connected to the development, because it's much faster. I mean, we scientists tend to strive into some different direction to see whether something is working better or worse. So development takes a bit longer. When you have the patient association, which has really a clear need for the drug, then the pace of developing is very, very faster. And with this kind of connecting, because in Urbanogen we've seen very efficient connection between the clinicians, scientists, and the patient association and the government, because also the government help in this development, the speed, the pace, it's so, let's say, unbelievably faster than if we would have that kind of development in a normal way as it was before.
This is also one of the main questions I did want to ask, the role that the governments play in these researchers, these kinds of projects. How important is that, and how important is it for a country, especially smaller countries like Slovenia, like Portugal, to have support from the government?
Luís?
Well, as Dr. Benčina said, we are in constant contact with our regulatory affairs, institutions, and so because the sector of medicines is highly regulated, we need to ensure that medicines are safe and effective, and so there's no shortcut for that. Okay. But there are lots of different bureaucratic details that governments can help. And also there is, the governments can help in the process of providing funding for these stages, like the toxicity evaluation, like the production of GMP batch, for which we don't have typically access to funding. And so I see that governments can have an extremely important role here. Also in the later stages, if there is not a company that wants to commercialize a specific therapy, the government can give, for instance, an hospital exemption that will allow us to manufacture the medicine. And so in some cases, when there is no industry interested in the product, this will allow patients to retain the access to these therapies. And I think that is extremely important.
But from a European perspective, can small countries like Slovenia and Portugal become relevant players in this field, or will they kind of always depend on what the large pharmaceutical centers develop?
Well, maybe I can add this. I mean, in Europe, in the West Europe, these kind of academic centers are well developed. So we are in a way struggling behind these well-developed academic centers, learning from them, because also the Portuguese partners as us, we are having the projects which are actually enabling us to learn from the advanced partners. So yeah, we can actually play an important role in development, because when we will have set up the academic centers which will be fit for the production of GMP-ready products, then we are actually putting ourselves in the parallel of the West well-developed developed academic center. What we are still struggling behind, I mean, I can tell from Slovenian perspective, it's the financial modes, because we know that in Germany, in Spain, in England, there is enormous amount of money invested in that translational part, which unfortunately in Slovenia is still very behind on comparing with the budget of these well-developed countries. I don't know how it is in the Portugal, but I think they are struggling more or less with the same problem.
How is it in Portugal? Yes.
Absolutely. So this is an issue. Some of the largest countries in the European Union have understood that advanced therapy medicinal products are a great opportunity to address all these different diseases that touch the European population. And also they are an opportunity from an economic standpoint, because they can bring also great benefit at an economic point. And so we need to put investment in this area, and we need to create national plans for the development of ATMPs, both in Portugal and Slovenia, from my opinion. And we need also to create lines of funding to make this a success. But I think we have all the conditions to be very successful in this area. Both Portugal and Slovenia have developed a biomedical number of community of scientists that is excellent, that has been generating excellent science, and now we need to help them to translate these discoveries into clinical benefit. And so I urge the Portuguese and the Slovenian governments to create the tools for this to happen.
And maybe just in short, to finish off, 10 years from now, what will have changed for patients with rare genetic diseases in Europe? Also, where do you see genetic therapies implemented in medicine, and how far?
So my ambition and what I anticipate and hope for is that we will be able to generate a larger number of therapies each year in our centers, and that this will make it possible to address these 7,000 rare disorders for which we don't have therapies now, and that we have the obligation to provide new therapies for the patients. Also, this can be a very strong pipeline from an economic standpoint for our countries. And so I think this will be a very good investment at all levels.
And of course, the main question, how can all of this help cure diseases that we see that are across the population, like cancer and some other as well, potentially in the future, of course?
Well, as I said, what we are creating is platforms where we establish the molecular sources of the disease, platforms where we establish manufacturing processes, regulatory processes, and analytical ways of analyzing that our medicines are safe. And so by generating these platforms, we will be able to apply these not only for these 3 disorders that we chose now, but for many other disorders. And so this is the approach that we are developing, the approach based on the platforms.
Thank you very much for taking the time for us.
Thank you, it has been a pleasure.
Gledali ste oddajo Zoom in hvala za vašo pozornost, ostanite z našim programom.